I don't flinch anymore when the door slams, not when the crystal chandelier in our penthouse rattles, or when the echo bounces off the marble floors like a gunshot. I've learned to keep my eyes steady, my breath even, because Colton's anger is a storm. Unpredictable, but you can always smell it coming. Tonight, though, I didn't see the lightning until it struck. My cheek throbs, a hot pulse under my left eye, and my lip stings where it's split against my teeth. I sit on the edge of the cream leather sofa, pressing a damp towel to my face, the cold seeping into my skin but doing nothing for the fire inside. The Atlanta skyline glitters through the floor-to-ceiling windows, all sharp edges and false promises, like it's mocking me for thinking I could ever outrun this. It started over nothing, the way it always does. I'd been prepping for tomorrow's trial, papers strewn across the dining table, my laptop humming with case notes on a drug lord whose empire I'm hell-bent on dismantling. Colton came home late, his tie loosened, bourbon on his breath, the kind of swagger that fills a room and chokes it at the same time. He's a defense lawyer, the kind who can make a jury weep for a murderer, and he's damn good at it. Too good. "You're working too hard, babe," he said, leaning against the kitchen island, his voice smooth as silk but sharp underneath. I didn't look up. "Mistake number one." "I'm serious, Melise. You're making us look bad. People talk, you know. The wife who's too busy to play the part." I snapped. "Mistake number two. Maybe if you didn't parade me like a trophy at your firm's galas, I'd have time to breathe." The words were out before I could stop them, and the air shifted, like the moment before a car crash. Colton's smile vanished. He crossed the room in 3 strides, his hand a blur. The slap was so fast I didn't even gasp, just stumbled, my hip slamming into the table's edge, papers fluttering to the floor like wounded birds. My ear rang, a high-pitched whine, and when I touched my lip, my fingers came back red. He stood over me, chest heaving, eyes dark. "You don't get to talk to me like that," he said, low and final, like he was handing down a verdict. Then he walked away, leaving me to pick up the pieces of my pride. Now, here I am, 35 years old, a prosecutor who stared down killers in court, reduced to silence in my own home. The towel's gone lukewarm, but I keep it pressed to my face because moving feels like surrender. The penthouse is too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own heartbeat. Colton's in his study, probably pouring another drink, acting like nothing happened. I glance at the clock. 9:47 p.m. The trial starts at 8 a.m., and I haven't memorized my opening statement. But that's not what's gnawing at me. It's the mirror across the room, taunting me to look. I don't want to see the bruise blooming under my eye, the proof that I'm not as untouchable as I pretend to be. The buzzer jolts me upright, the sound slicing through the silence like a blade. My parents. They'd texted earlier about stopping by, some excuse about bringing fruit from their farmer's market hall. I'd forgotten, and now my stomach twists. I can't let them see me like this. I stand, smoothing my blouse, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear, as if I can hide the truth under a layer of polish. The buzzer rings again, insistent, and I force myself to the intercom. "Coming," I say, my voice steadier than I feel. I open the door, and there they are, Evelyn and Harold Mercier, my parents, looking like they stepped out of a Norman Rockwell painting, all soft sweaters and earnest smiles. Mom's holding a wicker basket of peaches. Dad's got his usual ball cap, the one he's worn since I was a kid. "Melise, honey." Mom's voice is bright, but it falters when she sees me. Her eyes lock on my face and her hands tighten on the basket, knuckles whitening. Dad's smile freezes, his gaze flicking to the bruise, then away, like he's afraid it'll burn him. They step inside, the scent of their lavender soap clashing with the sterile air of the penthouse. I turn slightly, hoping the dim lighting hides the worst of it, but I know it's useless. "Just a little accident," I mumble, gesturing to my face. Bumped into a cabinet. Clumsy me. The lie tastes bitter, but I've told it before, too many times. Mom sets the basket on the counter, her movements slow, deliberate, like she's handling evidence. "You should be more careful," she says, her voice tight, and I want to scream. Careful? I've been careful my whole life. Careful not to upset Colton, careful not to let the cracks in our marriage show, careful to keep my parents' rose-colored view of him intact. Dad clears his throat, staring at the skyline like it's the most fascinating thing he's ever seen. "Nice view tonight," he says, and I almost laugh at the absurdity. My face is marked, my lip is bleeding, and he's talking about the view. Before I can respond, Colton's voice cuts through the room, smooth and sharp as a switchblade. "Well, look who's here, the Merciers, gracing us with their presence." He's leaning against the doorway of his study, a tumbler of bourbon in hand, his suit jacket gone, sleeves rolled up, like he's just another guy unwinding after a long day. His eyes glint, and I know that look. It's the one he wears when he's playing a role, the charming lawyer who can talk his way out of anything. "Your family's so polite, Melis," he says, his tone dripping with mockery. "Not a word out of place, gotta love that." Mom's lips press into a thin line, but she doesn't speak. Dad gives a stiff nod, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. The air thickens, heavy with things unsaid. I want to grab them, shake them, beg them to see what's happening, but I'm frozen, the towel still clutched in my hand like a lifeline. Colton takes a sip of his drink, his gaze sliding from them to me, and I feel it like a physical weight. "You folks staying for dinner?" he asks, knowing damn well they won't. Mom glances at Dad, then at me, her eyes lingering on the bruise. For a second, I think she'll say something, anything, but she just picks up her purse. "We should get going," she says softly. "Early morning tomorrow." They leave as quietly as they came, the door clicking shut behind them, and the sound is louder than any scream I've ever swallowed. I stand there, staring at the peaches on the counter, their perfect golden skin mocking my imperfection. Colton chuckles from the doorway, low and cruel. "Polite little family you've got," he says, and I hear the creak of the floor as he heads back to his study, leaving me alone again. The clock ticks, 10:02 p.m. I sink back onto the sofa, the towel falling to my lap, and something inside me shifts. Not breaks, not yet, but shifts, like a fault line waking up after years of dormancy. 30 minutes later, the study door opens again. I don't look up, but I feel him. His presence fills the room like smoke curling into every corner. He crosses to me, his steps slow, deliberate, and then he's there, kneeling in front of me, his hands resting lightly on my knees. "Melis," he says, his voice soft now, almost tender. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. You know how I get when I'm stressed. This case, it's killing me." His eyes are wide, pleading, the perfect picture of remorse. But I've seen this act before, and tonight I notice something new, a flicker of calculation, a glint that says he's measuring my reaction, waiting to see if I'll fold. I don't speak. I just look at him. Really look, and for the first time, I see the man behind the mask. Not the charming lawyer, not the husband I married 10 years ago, but the one who knows exactly how to keep me in line. My silence unnerves him. I can tell by the way his jaw tightens, the way his fingers twitch against my knees. "Say something," he urges, and there's an edge to it now, a warning. But I don't. I just hold his gaze, and something in me hardens, like steel cooling after a forge. The next morning, I'm in Fulton County Courthouse, standing before a packed gallery, my briefcase open on the prosecution table. The drug lord, Javier Morales, sits across the room, his face unreadable, but it's not him I'm worried about. It's Colton, representing Morales, looking every inch the legal titan in his tailored charcoal suit. The bruise under my eye is hidden beneath layers of concealer, but I feel it with every blink, a reminder of last night's truth. I deliver my opening statement, my voice steady, laying out Morales's crimes: trafficking, extortion, murder. The jury listens, rapt. But Colton's watching me, his smile faint, predatory. When it's his turn, he rises, buttoning his jacket, and addresses the court with that effortless charisma that's won him countless cases. But then he pauses, his eyes locking on mine, and he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, the prosecution paints a compelling picture, but passion can cloud judgment. Miss Mercier, for instance, seems to be under considerable personal strain." The words land like a punch, subtle enough to pass as professional, vicious enough to make my pulse spike. The gallery murmurs, and I see a jury glance at me, curious. He's not just defending his client. He's attacking me, right here, in the one place I'm supposed to be untouchable. The session ends, and I gather my files, my hands steady despite the storm inside. I'm halfway down the courthouse hallway when Colton catches up, his hand closing around my wrist, not hard enough to bruise, but firm enough to trap. "You did well in there," he says, his voice low, intimate, like we're sharing a secret. "But don't think you can outplay me, Millis. You can't escape me." His grip tightens just enough to make my skin burn, and I'm about to pull away when a flash goes off. A reporter lurking nearby snaps a photo, his camera clicking like a predator's teeth. Colton releases me instantly, his smile back in place, but the damage is done. I know that photo will be online by noon, fueling whispers about the troubled prosecutor. Back in the penthouse that night, I'm alone. Colton's at some late meeting, probably strategizing with his firm. I head to my home office, a small room off the living room, where I keep my case files and a hidden USB drive. It's my insurance policy. Recordings of Colton's threats, photos of past bruises, bank statements showing money he siphoned from our joint account. I reach for the drawer where I keep it, but my fingers find only empty space. The USB is gone, so is my laptop. My heart lurches, and I check the security app on my phone. The footage loads, grainy but clear. A man in a dark jacket, face partially hidden, slipping into the penthouse last night. I recognize the jacket. It belongs to Ethan, Colton's best friend and fellow lawyer at his firm. I confront Colton when he gets home, my voice shaking with rage. "Where is it? The USB, my laptop. What did you do?" He leans against the kitchen island, calm as ever, swirling his bourbon. "You're paranoid, Melise. Always have been. Think you're smarter than me? This legal world is mine." His smile is a blade, and I feel it cut deep, not because he's right, but because he thinks he's already won. I back away, my mind racing. Without that evidence, I'm defenseless. He stripped me of my proof, my power, and he knows it. The next day, my phone buzzes with a call from Mom. I answer, desperate for a lifeline, but her voice is cold. "Melis, stop this. Whatever's going on with you and Colton, don't drag us into it." I'm stunned. "You saw my face, Mom. You know what he did." There's a long pause, and then she says, "We got a letter. It says if you go to the police, they'll ruin us, our savings, our house, everything." My blood runs cold. Colton's not just coming for me. He's weaponizing my family against me. I beg her to stand with me, but she hangs up, and the silence is louder than any slap. A week later, I'm at a charity gala hosted by Colton's firm. My stomach knotted as I step onto the stage to deliver the keynote. I'm halfway through my speech about justice when the screen behind me flickers. A video plays, grainy footage of me or someone who looks like me, accepting a thick envelope from a man in a hoodie. The crowd gasps, whispers erupting like wildfire. I freeze, my words dying in my throat. Colton steps forward, his face a mask of concern. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's give Miss Mercier a moment," he says, but his eyes glint with triumph. He's framed me, painted me as corrupt, and the crowd's turning on me. I leave the stage, my heels clicking in the deafening silence, my career crumbling with every step. Days later, a text from an unknown number lights up my phone. "Warehouse on 5th, St. Midnight. Your USB is there." I know it's a trap, but I'm desperate. I drive to the warehouse, the Atlanta night pressing against my car windows like a warning. Inside, it's dark, the air thick with dust and oil. A man steps out of the shadows, tall, scarred, a face I recognized from a case I prosecuted last year. "You should have stayed quiet," he says, a knife glinting in his hand. My heart hammers, but I keep my voice steady. "Colton sent you, didn't he?" He smirks, advancing, and I back away, stalling, my fingers fumbling with my phone to send my location to Rachel, my best friend, and a lawyer who's been my rock. He lunges, and I dodge, my heel catching on a pipe, sending me sprawling. The knife grazes my arm, a sharp sting, but I scramble up, shouting to keep him talking. Headlights flood the warehouse. Rachel's car. She bursts in, shouting, and the man bolts, disappearing into the night. I collapse against her, blood trickling down my arm, but alive, barely. As Rachel drives me home, I stare out the window, the city lights blurring through my tears. Colton's not just a bully. He's a predator, and he's closing in. But something in me refuses to break. I think of the bruise, the stolen USB, my parents' silence, the gala's humiliation, the knife's cold edge. I'm not the woman who knelt under his apologies anymore. I'm the one who's going to burn his world down even if it takes everything I have. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I hear a whisper, a question I can't shake. What else is he hiding? The warehouse's cold air still clung to my skin as Rachel sped us through Atlanta's back streets, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. My arm throbbed where the thug's knife had grazed it, a shallow cut but sharp enough to remind me how close I'd come to not walking out of there. Blood seeped through the sleeve of my blouse, staining the silk, and I pressed a wad of tissues against it, my hands trembling not from fear, but from something fiercer. Rage, maybe, or the realization that Colton wasn't just a man who hit me. He was a man who'd kill to keep his secrets buried. Rachel glanced at me, her jaw tight, eyes flicking between the road and my face. "You're okay," she said, more command than comfort. "We're going to fix this, Melise. He doesn't get to win." I nodded, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying the thug's words, the glint of his knife, the way he'd said, "Colton sent you, didn't he?" with no denial. I stared out the window, the city's neon lights smearing into streaks of red and gold, and whispered to myself, he's not just dangerous, he's desperate. Back at my penthouse, I locked the door behind us, the click too loud in the silence. Rachel dropped her keys on the counter and pulled a first aid kit from her bag, her movements brisk, efficient, like she'd prepared for this moment. "Let me see your arm," she said, and I rolled up my sleeve, wincing as she cleaned the cut. The sting was nothing compared to the bruise under my eye, now yellowing at the edges, or the deeper ache in my chest, the kind that comes from knowing the man you married is a monster. Rachel taped a bandage over the wound, her eyes meeting mine. "You're not backing down, are you?" It wasn't a question. I shook my head. "Not anymore." She nodded, then reached into her bag again, pulling out a slim black hard drive. "This," she said, placing it in my hand, "is your leverage." I plugged it into my laptop, the screen casting a pale glow across the kitchen island. The hard drive was a gold mine. Hundreds of emails, meticulously organized, showing Colton's dealings with clients who weren't just criminals but kingpins. Drug traffickers, arms dealers, men with names I'd seen in my own case files. He wasn't just defending them, he was laundering their money, funneling it through shell companies, offshore accounts, and my stomach twisted. Our joint accounts. I scrolled through the transactions, dates and amounts blurring together, each one a betrayal. 50,000 here, 200,000 there, all under my name, making me look complicit. He's setting me up, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Rachel leaned over my shoulder, her breath warm against my ear. He's been doing this for years, Melise. You're not the only one he's hurt. I closed the laptop, my hands shaking now, not from the cut but from the weight of it all. Colton wasn't just abusing me. He was building an empire on lies, and I was his collateral damage. I thought of the stolen USB, the thug in the warehouse, the fake video at the gala. Every move he made was calculated, a chess game where I was the pawn he'd sacrificed to save his king. But pawns can become queens, and I was done playing his game. What now? I asked Rachel, my voice steadier than I felt. She didn't hesitate. We take this to someone who can make it hurt. Elisa Carrington. The name hit me like a spark. Elisa Carrington, the journalist who'd brought down a corrupt senator with a single article, her words sharp enough to rewrite laws. I'd watched her on late-night news, her face fierce, unapologetic, the kind of woman who didn't just report the truth, she wielded it. Can we trust her? I asked, and Rachel's lips curved into a rare smile. She's been waiting for a story like this, and she's not afraid of men like Colton. We arranged a meeting for the next morning, a coffee shop downtown, neutral ground where no one would look twice at two women talking over lattes. But as I lay in bed that night, the hard drive hidden under my pillow, sleep wouldn't come. My mind kept circling back to one question. What else is he hiding? The coffee shop was tucked between a bookstore and a yoga studio, its windows fogged with steam, the air thick with the smell of espresso and burnt sugar. Elisa was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth, her laptop open, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun. She looked younger than I'd expected, maybe late 30s, but her eyes were sharp, like she'd seen too much to be fooled by anyone. I slid into the booth, Rachel beside me, and pushed the hard drive across the table. This is everything, I said, my voice low. Emails, bank records, proof he's been laundering money. And I hesitated, touching the bruise under my eye, now faint but still tender. Proof he's been hurting me. Elisa didn't flinch. She plugged in the drive, her fingers flying over the keyboard, and within minutes her face hardened. This is bigger than I thought, she said, her voice clipped. Colton's not just a bad husband. He's a linchpin in a network, Melis. These clients, he's not just their lawyer, he's their cleaner. She turned the laptop toward me, showing an email from Colton to a man named Victor, a name I recognized from a dismissed case last year. Funds secured. M's account is clean. She won't suspect. My blood ran cold. He'd been using me as a shield, a front for his crimes. Knowing my role as a prosecutor would make anyone hesitate to dig deeper. There's more, Elisa said, her eyes meeting mine. You're not the only one he's hurt. I've been tracking two other women, Dana and Alana. Both worked at his old firm in Chicago. Both left after incidents. They're ready to talk, but they're scared. They saw what happened to the last woman who crossed him. I frowned, my heart stuttering. What do you mean, the last woman? Elisa's jaw tightened. Her name was Claire, a paralegal. She filed a harassment claim against Colton 6 years ago. A week later, she was found dead. Official report said overdose, but she trailed off, letting the implication hang. I felt the air leave my lungs, my mind flashing to the letter I'd found in Colton's safe last week, tucked behind a stack of cash. Claire, you should have stayed quiet. No signature, just his handwriting, unmistakable. I leaned back, my hands gripping the edge of the table. He killed her? I whispered, and Elisa shrugged, her eyes dark. No proof, but the timing's too clean, and Colton's too good at covering his tracks. Rachel reached for my hand, her grip steady, grounding. "We're not letting him do it again," she said. "We're building a case, Melise. You, Dana, Alana, me, Elisa. He's not untouchable." I nodded, but my mind was racing, piecing together fragments. Claire's death, the stolen USB, the thug's knife. Colton wasn't just a threat to me. He was a predator, and I'd been sleeping next to him for years. That afternoon, I met Dana and Alana at a nondescript office Elisa had rented, a safe space away from prying eyes. Dana was in her 40s, her blonde hair streaked with gray, her eyes carrying the weight of someone who'd fought and lost too many times. Alana was younger, her hands fidgeting with a silver bracelet, her voice soft but steady. "He cornered me in the file room," Dana said, her voice flat. "Told me I'd never work in Chicago again if I spoke up. I believed him." Alana nodded, her eyes distant. "For me, it was after hours. He said it was my fault, that I'd led him on. I quit the next day. Their stories were mirrors of mine, different details but the same script. Control, fear, silence. We sat around a folding table, laptops open, and started building. Elisa had set up an encrypted server and we uploaded everything: emails, bank records, Dana's hospital report from a fall, Alana's text messages begging Colton to leave her alone. My contribution was the audio, a recording from 3 months ago, my voice trembling as I hid in the bathroom. "He's outside the door. I don't know what he'll do if I come out." By midnight, we'd launched a website, anonymous but unyielding, a single page with our stories, the evidence, and a headline: "We are not silent." No hashtags, no pleas for sympathy, just the truth, raw and undeniable. I added the audio last, captioning it, "He thought no one was listening." We heard each other. As I hit publish, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You're making a mistake, fix it or I will." I showed it to Rachel, who didn't blink. "Colton's scared," she said. Good. But I wasn't so sure. The letter about Claire, the thug in the warehouse, the missing USB. Colton wasn't just scared, he was cornered, and cornered animals bite. The next morning, I walked into the DA's office, my heels clicking on the polished floor, my briefcase heavy with copies of the hard drive's contents. I'd planned to hand them to my boss, Ada Karen Voss, and demand an investigation, but Karen was waiting for me, her face grim. "Melis, you're suspended," she said, no preamble. "You've been pushing too hard on the Morales case. There's conflict of interest. Your husband's the defense." I stared at her, my heart sinking. "Karen, you know me. You know I'm clean." She sighed, her eyes softening but resolute. "I believe you, but the optics are bad. That photo from the courthouse, the gala video, it's a mess. Take 2 weeks. Get your house in order." I wanted to argue, to shove the hard drive in her face, but I saw the warning in her eyes. Someone was watching, someone with enough pull to tie her hands. I left the office, my suspension letter burning a hole in my bag, and drove to the penthouse, my mind a storm of fury and fear. Colton was waiting, sitting at the dining table, a glass of bourbon in hand, his smile cold. "Rough day, babe?" he asked, and I saw it then, the glint of victory in his eyes. He knew about the suspension. He had probably orchestrated it. I didn't answer, just walked to his study, my hands shaking as I opened his safe. I'd cracked the code months ago, a small rebellion he never suspected. Inside, I found the letter about Claire, but something else caught my eye. A flash drive, not mine, labeled M, Final Plan. My heart stopped. I pocketed it, along with the letter, and slipped out before he could notice. Back at my car, I plugged the drive into my laptop, my fingers trembling as I tried to open it. password protected. I tried everything. Our anniversary, his birthday, my name. Nothing worked. But the file's existence was enough to make my skin crawl. Final plan. It wasn't a love letter. It was a threat, and I didn't need to open it to know it was about me. I called Rachel, my voice low. I found something in his safe, a drive labeled with my name. I can't get in. She didn't hesitate. Bring it to me. I know a guy who can crack it. But before I could hang up, another call came through, an unknown number. I answered, and a woman's voice, soft but urgent, said, "Millis, you don't know me, but I'm Colton's mother. Stop this now or he'll kill you. He's done it before." The line went dead, and I sat there, frozen, the phone heavy in my hand. I drove to Rachel's apartment, the flash drive burning a hole in my pocket, the woman's warning echoing in my head. Rachel's place was a stark contrast to the penthouse. Cozy, cluttered with law books stacked on every surface. She took the drive, her face grim, and called her contact, a hacker named Leo who owed her a favor. While we waited, she poured me a coffee, her eyes searching mine. "You're not alone in this," she said, and I wanted to believe her, but the weight of Colton's reach was suffocating. My parents' silence, my suspension, the thug's knife, it was all closing in, and I felt like a deer in a hunter's scope. Leo arrived an hour later, a wiry guy with tattoos creeping up his neck. He cracked a drive in 20 minutes, his face paling as he scrolled through the files. "This isn't just about you," he said, turning the laptop toward me. The final plan was a dossier. Photos of me at work, at home, even at the coffee shop with Elisa. Timelines of my daily routine, a list of disposal options, with words like accident and overdose circled in red. My breath caught, and Rachel grabbed my hand, her grip fierce. "He's not getting away with this," she said, but I barely heard her. My eyes were locked on a single line at the bottom of the dossier. Claire was a warning. Melis is the endgame. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the screen, my heart pounding so loud it drowned out the room. Rachel was already moving, copying the files, emailing them to Elisa, who was working late, her article nearly ready. "This changes everything," Elisa texted back. "I'm connecting you with Dana and Alana tomorrow. We're going public." I nodded, numb, my mind stuck on Claire, on the thug, on Colton's mother's voice. He's done it before. I thought of my parents, their silence, their fear, and something in me snapped. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for Claire, for Dana, for Alana, for every woman Colton had crushed to keep his throne. The next day we met at the same office, the air thick with purpose. Dana brought a hospital report, her wrist broken from a fall Colton caused. Alana shared texts, his threats hidden in casual words. I added the dossier, the letter, the emails. Elisa recorded everything, her camera a quiet witness. By evening, the website was updated, the dossier uploaded with a new headline. He planned to kill her. The internet exploded. Comments poured in, some calling us liars, others sharing their own stories of men like Colton. But then the backlash came. Colton's PR team, a machine of spin doctors, released a statement. Melis Mercier is mentally unstable, fabricating evidence to destroy a respected attorney. They leaked a doctored psych evaluation, my name on it, claiming I'd been treated for paranoia. I stared at the screen, my face burning as colleagues texted me, some supportive, others distant, unsure. That night, my phone buzzed again. An email from a DA colleague, sent from a burner account. "Someone inside is leaking your moves. Watch your back." I showed Rachel, who cursed under her breath. "He's got someone in your office," she said, and I nodded, my mind racing. Colton's reach was everywhere. My work, my home, my family. I thought of the secret apartment Rachel had found, a place Colton kept off the books. filled with documents we hadn't yet accessed. "We need to get in there," I said, and Rachel's eyes narrowed. "It's risky. If he catches us." She didn't finish, but I knew. The thug, the dossier, Claire's death, he'd do anything to stop us. We broke into the apartment at 2 a.m., the building a run-down complex on the edge of the city, far from Colton's polished world. Rachel picked the lock, her hands steady, while I kept watch, my heart in my throat. Inside, the place was sparse. A desk, a filing cabinet, a laptop. We found contracts, ledgers, names of clients, tied to the emails on the hard drive. But the real find was a photo, tucked in a drawer, Colton with a woman, her face bruised, her eyes empty, on the back, in his handwriting, C. 2018. Claire. My hand shook as I slipped it into my bag, my mind screaming that this was the proof we needed, but also the proof that I was next. We were halfway out when headlights swept the lot. Rachel grabbed my arm, pulling me behind a dumpster as a car rolled up, Colton's black SUV. My breath stopped. He stepped out, phone to his ear, his voice low but furious. "She's in too deep. Handle it tonight." I didn't know who he was talking to, but I knew it was about me. Rachel's hand tightened on mine, and we waited, crouched in the dark, until he drove away. Back at her place, we uploaded the photo to the website, Elisa working through the night to finalize her article. By dawn, it was live, the headline screaming, "The hands behind the silence, a lawyer's trail of abuse and murder." The article named Claire, linked her death to Colton, and exposed his money laundering network, backed by the emails, the dossier, the photo. I was at Rachel's when the news broke, my phone buzzing with notifications, colleagues, reporters, even my mother. I ignored her call, my heart too raw to face her silence again. But then the FBI called, a voice I didn't recognize. "Ms. Mercier, we're opening an investigation into Colton Hayes. We need your testimony." I agreed, my voice steady, but inside I was reeling. Colton was arrested that afternoon, handcuffed in his office, his face pale on the live news feed. The cameras caught his eyes, wide, panicked, but still defiant. I watched, my coffee cold in my hand, and felt nothing. Not relief, not victory, just a quiet resolve. I met my mother that evening at a diner, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like regret. She looked older, her hands twisting a napkin, her eyes avoiding mine. "I knew," she said finally, her voice barely a whisper. "I saw the bruises before, Melise, but I thought it was better to stay out of it. I didn't want to lose you." I stared at her, the words cutting deeper than any blow Colton had landed. "You didn't lose me," I said, my voice cold. "You gave me up." I left her there, the napkin shredded on the table, and drove to my new apartment, a small rental far from the penthouse's sterile gleam. That night, I lit a candle, its flame flickering against the window, casting shadows on the bare walls. I opened my journal, the one I'd started months ago when the bruises became too many to ignore, and wrote, "I don't need her forgiveness. I need to keep going." I filed for divorce the next day, the papers heavy in my hands, and requested a permanent protective order. Both were approved by noon, the judge's signature a quiet victory. But the real fight was just beginning. Dana, Alana, and I met at the courthouse, filing a lawsuit against Colton's firm for enabling his abuse, their silence as damning as his fists. Colton's response came that night, a video posted to his firm's social media, his hair disheveled, his voice breaking. "They're painting me as a monster," he said, tears in his eyes. "Melis is troubled, vengeful. I loved her." The comments were brutal. Thousands calling him out, sharing the article, our website. One stood out, from a woman named Sarah. "She survived you. That's louder than your lies." It was shared a million times, and I felt a spark of something I hadn't in years, hope. Then Elisa called, her voice urgent. Melis, there's a fourth victim. She reached out an hour ago. She says she's Colton's sister. I froze, the candle's flame dancing in my peripheral vision. His sister? The woman who'd called, warning me he'd kill? My mind raced, pieces falling into place. Claire, the dossier, the secret apartment, the sister. I didn't know her story, but I knew one thing. We were building a storm, and it was far from over. I looked at the candle, its light steady now, and whispered, "For those still silent." The words weren't just for me anymore. They were for her, for Claire, for every woman whose voice had been stolen. And as the flame burned, I knew I'd keep fighting, not just to survive, but to make sure no one else had to.